coming in and working alongside with us to really support SEs in this region. So with the ecosystems approach, we have 5 main pillars. So starting with the social enterprise training hub. So the first cohort has just gone through this training program called Seth, and 2 of them will be pitching in one of the sessions later this week. So we're very excited to hear them pitch. We also have an expertise network, which is basically engaging professionals with different skill set for skills-based volunteering. And we're always looking for more because as a founder of an SE, you need that, you need the expertise around you, especially in the legal, financial. So please get in touch if you want to volunteer. Conference and events, which is what we're in right now, but also throughout the year, we'll have more events coming up through webinars. The Investors Club. So this is for any funder out there or anyone who's interested in becoming an impact investor themselves. We will be launching this in June, about June, July. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. And lastly, the latest thing that we have started is a resilience program. So as you would know, the proceeds from this conference is all going to a resilience program. So the program has kind of 3 avenues in terms of helping social entrepreneurs in the funding area. So we have the targeted grants, which will be a one-off kind of grant payment, a resilience fund, which is debt financing at a low and inclusive rate. Those 2 will be available in Malaysia and Indonesia, where we're working with partners to set this up. But if you're from anywhere else in the Southeast Asian region, we will try our best to matchmake where we can find a suitable funder who comes along and matchmake that to an SE that they want to support. There are definitely more details on this coming up, but you can email resilience@TBN Asia, or you can come in on Wednesday morning. There is a session at 9:30 a.m. where my colleague Alex will be speaking more about the resilience program. So with that, the sponsorship money that we've received from all these sponsors and our partners is also going to the resilience program as well. So just want to say thank you. This conference would not have happened without the sponsors. So thank you very much. So we have lots of people dialing in today, and we just want to get a sense of who's in the room. So a poll is going to pop up on your screen right now. And we just want to know which area where you're dialing in from right now, and also which industry you work in. So if I can just ask LJ, our Zoom tech, just to pop the poll up, that would be great. And then what we'll do is it will take literally 5-10 seconds to complete, and we will then show the results. So it's up ready, and I'll just give it a couple more seconds and we will share the results. Okay, so the results are here. So mostly coming in from Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, other Southeast Asian countries, and most people are from the nonprofit NGO space. Great to see the social entrepreneurs in the room as well. So one of the things that we want to do at this conference is really to encourage social entrepreneurs to keep going and to really put a support system around them as well. So thank you for filling out that poll. And I would like to introduce now our moderator for today. So her name's Erin Sweeney, and she's the Manager for Sustainable Business and Investment at Grow Asia. She's got an exciting lineup of panelists. So over to you, Erin.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. We're so excited that you've all chosen to join us today. Again, my name is Erin, and I work for Grow Asia, which is a multi-stakeholder platform catalyzed by the World Economic Forum back in 2015. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to introduce Grow Asia and then speak to you about our topic for today. Next slide, please. Grow Asia takes a systems approach, which is something we'll be talking about over the course of the session today, as we aim to improve smallholder farmers' productivity and profitability while ensuring environmental sustainability through a multi-stakeholder partnership model across Southeast Asia. Next slide. With 6 offices in our region, Grow Asia's network is embedded in the local context, but we're also linked to global conversations. And our 500 members are quite diverse. We have 50% from the private sector, including global agribusiness and SMEs, 30% from NGOs and farmer organizations, and 20% from governments. And that partnership model has allowed us to reach 1.8 million smallholder farmers over the last 5 years. Next slide. So we're seeing an increase in food, agriculture, and forestry investments here in Southeast Asia. And as a response, Grow Asia and our partners are working to actually increase the uptake of sustainable and responsible practices through a set of guidelines, which you see here on your screen. The guidelines include 10 issue areas to cover what investors should be considering before, during, and after investments are made. Next slide. These guidelines are aligned to the SDGs, so it's core to many investors' existing commitments. They're applicable to investors with multiple commodities in multiple Southeast Asian countries based on internationally recognized standards, and we do have license to operate with the ASEAN Ministers of Agriculture adopting these guidelines in 2018. And finally, these guidelines are voluntary, but we're looking to work together with ASEAN member states to integrate them into national policy making. Next slide, please. And just briefly, we've designed a 3-year program to engage investors, agribusinesses, SMEs, and farmers into understanding and taking up these guidelines, which will include sharing stories of responsible investing success and challenges. We'll be creating a 6-month blended learning program, and then we'll be hosting regional gatherings to share best practices and build stakeholder capacities. So if you're passionate about investing responsibly in food and agriculture in ASEAN, please do get in touch after today's session. I'll now introduce the core topic for today's discussion. We are looking to, of course, move away from this make, take, dispose economic model toward a more circular one. But just to give you a quick overview about how the circular economy model works, it's a model of production and consumption, which involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, and recycling existing materials and products as long as possible throughout the supply chain. So in practice, that means that we're reducing waste as much as possible throughout the value chain of any given product, from design all the way through to consumption, which you'll see here on the slide. When a product reaches the end of its life, the materials are then kept within the economy as much as possible. And those materials are productively used again and again, creating these feedback loops across the system and adding further value to the system while reducing the pressure on raw materials. Next slide. Today, you'll hear from several social enterprises, a startup technology enabler, and an investor. And every ecosystem looks very different, but in many cases, we do see that corporates are supplying circular economy entrepreneurs and social enterprises with their waste materials. Those social enterprises then convert the waste into useful products and either sell those products back to the corporate or enter into new markets that are increasingly having high standards for sustainable recycled products. Next slide. So the business case is absolutely there for the circular economy. Accenture showed that there's a $4.5 trillion untapped economic potential if we can convert these existing linear systems of make, take, dispose into circular ones by 2030. And in just the last 2 months, we're seeing very encouraging trends emerging from the COVID-19 crisis. We see major food companies adopting more socially aware practices in that Forbes article, and ESG investment managers are showing that environmentally and socially driven funds are outperforming their traditional counterparts. So in today's session, we're trying to answer the question, what restorative circular models are working to create greater social impact in a post-COVID world? And to answer this question from a uniquely Southeast Asian perspective, we have 4 experts. Each of them could easily fill this entire hour with their insights and expertise, but we've left time for your questions, so please send them to us via the Q&A function throughout the session, and we will try to get to them. Next slide. First, I'd like to introduce Tim Tan, our construction expert and entrepreneur, who's the director of TBN Asia and founder and CEO of Affordable Abodes. Tim, over to you.
Good day, everybody. It's wonderful to have you all here. Selamat Hari Raya to all my friends in Malaysia and Indonesia. I hope you had a great weekend. Just a quick introduction for my company and myself. My background has been about 2 decades in the building industry with different types of building materials. Unfortunately, those 2 decades were spent producing a lot of carbon for the industry. What we've done now is try to transform that carbon producing into carbon absorbing. So if you look at what we're trying to do now with our shelter technology is to upcycle kanaf-based biomass into useful building material. And we use the waste component for the plants for that and mix that with industrial waste lime. So could I go back up one slide, please? Yeah, so how has COVID-19 impacted us? You know, our businesses in Malaysia and Indonesia and all over, Singapore as well, including mine, have all been practically shut down. The supply chains have stopped. There's increases in costs we expect to come. You know, the toughest thing is to see all our migrant workers locked down in their dormitories. Some of them are not even being fed properly. They're not able to send money home now to their families. It's a really tough situation. Food sustainability, that's tough too, because of desertification of many of the farmlands in this region. You know, climate change has affected the paddy crops very drastically, and we need to take a serious look at that. Otherwise, these paddy farmers are going to go hungry, right? And to top it all off, we're still having climate change. You know, our construction industry in the built environment produces 40% of the greenhouse gases, and it's getting worse, right? It's not improving. So what are we trying to do here? Next slide, please. We're taking kanaf. Kanaf is a very fast-growing hibiscus plant, which matures in 4 months. We can harvest this several times a year, and we can take all of the parts of the kanaf plant, the fibers, the core, and even the leaves and shoots, and make it into useful materials. So we do this very quickly, and we try to do that with prefab construction. Next slide, please. What am I doing right now? Locked down at home? Well, we are trying to, you know, decentralize our production. We're trying to work out a new strategy where we can use technologies such as 3D printing, such as prefabrication, so that we can come back, you know, into the industry and continue building low-cost housing for our fellow brothers and sisters. Next slide.
30 seconds.
Yep. So with kanaf, basically we're looking at producing this type of circular economy where we can help the farmers have an income year-round, not just seasonal, but then also be able to produce very useful jobs and an economy in the both in the construction as well as in the agro sector as well, by producing animal feed. And kanaf itself can be eaten as a good plant, a nutritious plant source. All right, thank you.
Great, and I think there's one more slide for Tim's contact. Fantastic. So next I'd like to introduce Tommy Chiptajaya, who will take us through the world of plastic social enterprises. Tommy is the co-founder and CEO of Green Hope.
Thank you so much, Erin, and then good afternoon, everyone. And again, Selamat Hari Raya. It's been a really special, unique holiday the past weekend. And so we'll share the Green Hope story. It's an example of case where we try to tackle one of the biggest modern people's problems, and it's very complex with strong status quo momentum in it. So it's very, very challenging. So next slide, please. But it's very rewarding if we can move the society towards sustainability. So Green Hope is effectively, we're starting as a material innovator, but then we quickly realized that if we just sell technology, we try to convince technology, it's just not gonna work. We have to work with everybody else. So we need to be social innovator in a sense that we have to collaborate openly and very well with people of different, from different roles, from different countries, from different specialties, and everything to really move the society to replace conventional plastics. So we are in more than 12 countries right now, and we have multiple different technologies. And all our homegrown technologies researched by my co-founder partners, Sugianto Tandio. He basically spent 10 years researching, and so many failures, researching for what are the potential indigenous crops that are potential, that is can be good biodegradable, scalable solutions for the plastic replacements. And it took him 10 years of research, and then it took us further 7 years of patent process that we end up having some of the technologies already patented in US, in Singapore, and Indonesia. Next slide, please. How we see the world after we take notes, we engage in many different platforms, including World Economic Forum, in the UN and everything. We take notes and we understand, and eventually we come to the conclusion that it is a very complex problem that requires everybody to play their part well. So we need to stitch together how these various solutions, depending on which plastic waste, will require different optimum solutions. So for instance, next, of course, we support reduce of usage where we can, find substitutes. All of us who go to groceries, we should reduce double bags and all that stuff. Next slide. Then we also reuse. So all our private shopping bags, tumblers and everything, I think it's a no-brainer. We switch all to reuse where we can. But then when we see modern era production and manufacturing, we are talking about usually centralized production. Then we talk about packaging. Then when you start talking about packaging, then we talk about what is economically viable to recycle, where we recycle a lot of the packaging. So we move next here. But there's a lot of packaging that is actually not economically viable to recycle. So this is where we also look into the end of life, which is, if you next slide. The end of life is they're either in lower income countries, usually where it's landfill countries, then we pick return to earth, make sure it can be collected, no leakage, and safely biodegrade back to earth. And then if it's the higher income countries, then usually they have waste to energy or plastic to fuel, all kinds of processing. So our world, the way we see it, we need to stitch together all these various R. And Green Hope contribution is on the return to earth and biodegradable as well as bio-based bioplastics. So if we move to the next slide. Move next one. Now, this is a case study of one of the biocompostable technologies that we have is EcoPlus and Nature Loop. We source it from farmer cooperatives. So source for farmer co-ops, every 200 tons of EcoPlus bioresins will affect 500 farmers and their families. And we see that as narrowing the gap of inequality as well as no poverty in the SDG. And if you go next, what we do is through our R&D and manufacturing, we convert that into bioresins in the Green Hope production facilities, the upstream. And if you move next, then it turns into many different quality products that we produce and serve the Indonesian market as well as exported globally. You go next. Then this product, we did various testings, we did international certification. It's basically tackling the responsible consumption and production. So the waste is not negative to the environment. It's biodegradable and it's safe if accidentally eaten by animals. We never advertise our stuff to be eaten by animals or people. At the end of the day, we don't want to eat what we consume as much as possible. But if it's accidentally leaked and eaten, it's safe. Through all various testing. So this is what we see is one example where we try to streamline and have a circular economy on the modern objects. If you move next slide, final slide. See, we see ourselves as working with many different people and to turn into each individual product, say one product at a time to convert into the sustainable version of that. And it could be shopping bags, garbage bags, because garbage bags always goes to the landfill. The most economical solution and optimal solution is make it biodegradable. It does make sense to empty the waste and wash it and then try to recycle it, for instance, for garbage bags. And then many other different small items that is not economically viable to recycle. So these are some of the Green Hope contribution to the circular economy and to the world also. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our story. Yeah.
And lastly, I'm pleased to introduce Regula Sheg, who will bring the investor perspective to our conversation. Regula is Circulate Capital's Managing Director for Asia.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. It's a huge pleasure to be here with you. Circulate Capital is an investment management firm based in Singapore, which focuses on investing in the infrastructure and the value chain of bringing plastic back into the circular economy, and with that, preventing plastic to leaking into the ocean. I wanted to start quickly with some COVID observations. We have seen in the last couple of months that, interestingly, we see an increased use of plastic consumption. For example, in Thailand alone, 15% plastic usage has been increasing because of food delivery services. On the other side, by seeing increased plastic usage, we also see a shutdown of waste collection and sorting. Alone in Indonesia, about 63,000 waste workers lost their job in the COVID situation. Similar to what Tim said, a loss of livelihood, a loss of income for the communities. What we see is really that even now, or now even more importantly, we need to continue invest into the circular economy of bringing solid waste or material recovery back into the circular economy and recycle it accordingly. Next slide. Our fund is supported by some of the largest fast-moving consumer good companies such as Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Danone, Unilever, as well as Dow and Chevron Phillips, to really build the necessary circular economy in waste recovery. Next slide. What I see is particularly important now for the entrepreneurs is to support them in these difficult times within their businesses, to help them revise their business plans and strategies, make them understand how they need to position themselves in the industry, provide them with short-term line of credit where needed to weather these times, but also connect them very strongly to our network of mentors and potential supply agreements. Next slide. What we also see is extremely critical to give them the necessary support across our pipeline and the region through leadership programs. These are extremely difficult times, and that puts enormous stress on the entrepreneurs as well as on the businesses itself. So we very quickly pulled together a 3-month coaching program to allow our entrepreneurs to get access to webinars, coaching, micro-learning information, etc. Next slide. These just 2 investments we've done in the circular economy in the last couple of months, one in India, one in Indonesia, which are both processors of plastics which have been recovered upstream through collection and sorting to bring it back into the circular economy and recycle. One is PET flakes, which you can use then in other packaging or in textiles. And the other one in India, Lucro, is really using the very low valuable material, which usually leaks into the ocean, to bring it back into the circular economy and use it for flexible packaging. Next one. This is it. I look forward to the questions and really discuss what has to be done to really go post-COVID and strengthen the circular economy in all of our industries.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for providing that really great overview, and I can see that we will not have enough time in the hour, so I encourage everyone who's listening now to stay for the extra half an hour to get your questions in. But Regula, while you're still up, I'd like to ask you the first question. I know that Circulate Capital made your first ever investments just before the COVID crisis hit. So 2 questions. Why did Circulate Capital choose to invest in SMEs specifically? And how are you managing those investments differently now than you might have 6 months or a year ago?
Well, I go to the second question first. How do we manage them differently? We have a very active approach and engaged approach with our entrepreneurs. Pre-COVID and particularly also post-COVID, we help them really think through the different challenges they have very actively by having regular calls with them. We link them up to our networks of suppliers. As I mentioned, we give them particular training programs to deal with the stress they see personally as well as within the businesses. I think the economy is difficult right now. The oil price is very low, at a historic low. That in itself puts some more pressure on companies which are in the recycling industry. So we always have to really together become extremely innovative, think about how to go about things differently, find new distribution channels, improve their operation to very international standards. I think whether pre-COVID or post-COVID, the solid waste management and the pollution we're facing with plastic is even more relevant now. And as I mentioned, there is more and more consumption, and that material is challenging for the environment. So we need more investments now to really bridge that supply-demand gap. There is a tremendous need from companies to get recyclable content, but then there is a very little supply. So even we need to, irrespective of COVID or not, the investment, it's time now to really bridge that gap between the supply of the material and the demand of the material, and allow the global companies to reach their commitments of recyclable content. But for us, there is the only difference is that now obviously we have different business plans. We have a different environment, a different economic environment. We may go in a global crisis, and that just demands even more agility to act and be fast and be innovative. And we support very actively our entrepreneurs to get to the next level.
Great, thank you. Tim, while we're talking about material supply, could you share with us some of the kind of socioeconomic impacts of business as usual construction in a construction industry? And how does Affordable Abode seek to solve some of those issues that we see in the kind of more traditional construction sector?
Yeah, actually, it's not business as usual. The business is not going to be as usual anymore due to the 2 things, the supply disruption of materials and also due to the manpower lockdown. So, we are trying to look at how to re-engineer our business right now. And, through technology, I think we can achieve this with things that are not in the future. They are here now. There are things like 3D printing. Houses are being 3D printed already, and it's coming at a very cheap price. The university in Singapore has proven that it's about half the cost of conventional buildings, and it produces a lot less waste. So, construction is one of the most wasteful industries in the world. Just the mining alone of the raw material already produces 10% wastage, plus all the carbon, So it's really about us, trying to find a way to get our farmers to supply us the raw materials, not just to, depend on materials coming from Northern Asia to us. We can grow this stuff in our backyards. I mean, can you imagine getting a farmer to grow his own home? You know, there's nothing more interesting than that, right? So, I mean, I've got wonderful partners next to me here in the plastics industry. If I could recycle, you know, plastics into building materials and use tapioca resin to bind my products together, I can't imagine anything better, right? So yeah, there's lots of things that can be done. And I think that's what I you know, would encourage people to start, you know, thinking about very carefully how they can use this technology, use big data, you know, to you know, acquire the knowledge at this time and quickly re-engineer themselves to adapt. Great.
Thank you so much, Tim. Tommy, to build off of this kind of question about solutions. So with COVID-19, we're seeing this surge in the volume of disposables, increases in single-use plastic with delivery services, and the disruption of our regular waste management systems with essential workers. So what is Green Hope kind of currently doing to deal with, or to contribute to the solution for this challenge?
What we see is really COVID is like a perfect storm in a way of that double whammy, right? People do need that single use because there's that perception you don't want to transmit the virus or bacteria through reusable bags, for instance. And there are many research that do show if people don't wash their bags, and people, if they bring it to checkout counter, and if the checkout guy gets it, then the entire days worth of people consuming the checkout counter will get it. So it's a very difficult problem, but at the same time, it really does drive, help our thinking towards what is the fundamental things to really be able to shift this pattern of consumption once and for all. Because at the end of the day, I call it, we do in Green Hope, we have to respect, first of all, the requirements for people need to be safe, right, and healthy. Second, we have to respect the requirements of the solution needs to be economical. And this is where it gets really tricky, because in the circular economy, when you talk about food, you talk about e-waste, I see some questions, you talk about all the other things. In reality, there's the inherent value of those items that are actually valuable. In plastic, when, at least from my study so far, when we looked, plastic comes from a residue of oil production. So the entire world extract oil to turn it into energy, into automobile power plants and everything. And the lower temperature left over the residue, then they polymerize it, right? So what that means is even in the virgin state, it's already somewhat of residue. And in the low oil price world, that makes it very hard to make a shift towards bioplastic, for instance, or because by definition, it's going to be more expensive economically. So we have to respect the economics, because economics sometimes can be like an invisible wall that creates frustration. Why is it not happening? But economics is important. And COVID with the depression that is coming, or recession, whatever it is, it's becoming more important. So the world, unfortunately today, act based on an invisible checklist in their mind. You know, it has to be cheap, it has to be functional. If it doesn't, it's not functional and we're not going to do it. Then it has to be, then in the environmental value is like the third. So how to actually present a solution that is respecting the economics, the functionality, that you don't make a trade-off on the functionality, because they cannot make that trade-off on functionality. That's what we see in the COVID case, right? And then third is the environmental value needs to be together. And again, solution alone won't be enough. That's why we need collaborations with people in NGOs. We need collaboration with people in government, because we do need some sort of incentive. We do need some sort of disincentive for people who are using conventional item, non-recyclable, non-biodegradable. Those things needs to be over in reality. And if we build the external cost of to the environment into the product, then those products should be more expensive than the green ones. So who's brave enough to change the economics of things? But until that's changed, we're facing this somewhat of uphill battle in a way. So, but I'm optimistic. I mean, Green Hope has been growing double digits, high double digits for the last 3 years and stuff. So the momentum is there, the awareness is there, and COVID needs rejigging of our business plan. But I believe people will put more importance. But the three things needs to be together: the economics, functionality, and environmental value. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Tommy. Thank you. Tim and Regula, I'm going to ask you two questions back to back that are related. So we have the social enterprise side and the investor side. So I think I'll start with Tim. We see that there's this call to build back better after the COVID-19 crisis. What would you need with affordable abodes to actually be able to scale up and really meaningfully contribute to building back better in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, thank you. I think the most critical thing at this stage is to find partners who have the same heart, same vision to adopt this technology. It's new technology is never easy for investors to accept, especially when you don't have any track record. I mean, we're a pioneer in this industry. So it's really hard to prove, that it is really workable. But we have built a couple of houses, so we're going to bank on that. We're also, working with farmers to make sure that they have the right type of income year round, better income than what they're facing with just single crops every year. I think, yeah, there's a lot of things that need to be done coming down the road, and I just hope that this is a good kickoff from this TBN conference that will spark some ideas. I mean, I don't have all the answers, of course, but I expect my partners here next to me to help me out. So that's the whole point of participation.
Absolutely. And so Regula, from your perspective, what characteristics are you looking for when you're evaluating the capacity of a social enterprise to shift to or actually deliver on a circular economy approach?
Well, actually, I want to build on what Tim said. First of all, what we're looking for from an entrepreneurial perspective is that we are mission aligned and value aligned in how we want to tackle systemically the supply chain of plastics recycling or waste management or waste recovery. I think as an entrepreneur, you need to really look beyond your business. And that means particularly looking upstream, as we call it, in really understanding and integrating collection and sorting of materials. Particularly in emerging markets, the upstream collection and sorting is driven often by informals, and it's their livelihood, and they need to become an integrated part of the supply chain. And here comes also the importance of traceability and transparency, and big data and apps and market-driven digital solutions can provide that to really link up all the parts, all the stakeholders along the supply chain to make it work. And that is also really what we're looking for entrepreneurs which have the vision and the interest and the desire to look very broad and not just at their business itself. And because traceability and transparency is extremely important, and particularly also transparency in how you do business, and be leaders in the industry of bringing this very transparent approach to plate. I think that's very critical and important from an entrepreneurial perspective.
Fantastic, thank you. Tommy, I'm going to ask you one more question, then we'll turn over to one or two questions from the floor before the 1 p.m. session. Something we talked about a little bit last week and Regula just mentioned, but there's a lot of informality in the recycling sector, especially here in Asia. And there's this history of Asia receiving waste from the West or global North. How do you think that the circular economy movement should respond to those informal waste management systems, and what should we be learning from those workers?
To me, the economics of things is very instructive. We came from transition because my co-founder was a polymer person for 40 years, so researched a lot about it and understood that we came from the biodegradable approach, right? For those that are not economically viable. We did look into recycling, although I would have to say it's not Green Hope's forte right now, but we investigate recycling, we look into the end-to-end capacity, but then the struggle at that time when we looked, hopefully I'm very happy when Regula said about the international standards and transparency, which is I totally agree, because this is one of the areas for whatever reason, waste management is really not transparent at all. So the true cost of anything is very hard to see. Even the actual volume of things is very hard to see. Sometimes there are things like, I mean, in the Indonesian context, how many tons actually of waste every day being produced and processed? You know, for some of the people who are the upfront and if they have ulterior motives, some are really wants to inflate that numbers for budgeting purpose or deflate it, or so it's providing the transparency is absolutely important, because without that transparency, then we don't know what is the true economic cost of anything. What about the true cost of this informal pay? Can we pay them a minimum wage? And can we account for all the water use? Can we account for all the water effluence from the whole process? So we try to understand the end-to-end economics things, because at the end of the day, I guess what's challenging is without understanding that, nobody knows how much it truly costs and who's gonna foot the bill, right? And there's a lot of talk about particularly when I was in World Economic Forum, also in the West, they say recycle, but in reality, when Jana Jambek data shows that 70% of the plastic waste being dumped to the developing markets, developing countries, of course, we in developing countries, we're not very happy with that reality, right? If you have something that is economical, then the ideal things is that you process it in your own country. Because if you put it in Indonesia, if Indonesia don't have the right regulation, right protection for all these informal people, right education, then effectively we're subsidizing the developed countries' waste process through all our water usage and through all our people. So I think having something like Circulate Capital with the standards, with the approach that is very idealistic, but realistic to start with, at least provide the transparency first. I have a lot of hope to that, because as we scale up the fixing of this, we fix it while we scale it up at the same time. But we have to recognize the problem. What I don't want sometimes, if people shrug the problem under the carpet and then it's just not addressed, then we have a bigger monster. We used to have small monster, then we have bigger monster, where we have 10 million informal sectors now, or 20 million in Indonesia. I don't know if that's what our president wants. That's definitely not what our president wants. So all the plastic waste pollution solution will have this homework, unresolved homework. You name it, waste to energy, with all the CO2 produced, biodegradable, if it falls on the wrong side of do we have the supporting nature to actually biodegrade it properly? So all these things are just homework. We still need to continue working. But at least can we agree that the conventional mindset, conventional materials, the way we use it, the way we collect it, those things needs to stop. Let's agree on that, and all the solution needs to trial all at the same time while fixing the homework.
Great, thanks so much, Tommy. So we've actually managed to answer quite a few of the questions. You all are such effective speakers that you've answered the Q&A. So when I'll look through and just push through some of the questions we won't have time for. But in our last several minutes, I'm gonna ask each of the panelists to take just 1 minute and share your key takeaway. But when you're thinking about that key takeaway, please use the lens of where we see the circular economy, sustainability trends going in the future. So as we're forward looking beyond the immediate crisis, how do you see the kind of global shifts towards supporting a circular economy, or maybe what some of the kind of regional opportunities might be? And let me start with Regula.
we have seen the commitments of many global companies to circular economy and particularly in our case to recycling a percentage of the material they produce to be coming from recycled content. I know and I truly believe not only these companies but more and more companies will continue to make commitments and fulfill their commitments. So therefore, as far as whether it's plastics or other material circular economy goes, I truly believe we're now really at a point of no return. Not only because of their commitment, but because also because of the consumers' demand for a more circular economy. But I think what we really need, and Tommy mentioned that early on, is we need all stakeholders to be part of it. And that means governments with their roles to play. That means the brands with their, to play their role and to fulfill their commitments, and I trust they do. The consumers to change their behavior and how they look at material and how they look at something they consume. That it's not to be thrown away, but it has value. We need what Yvonne shared with us, traceability and transparency, which is absolutely instrumental. Putting a value to each part of the material or what we consume along the value chain. We talk about full life cycle analysis. And then we need the entrepreneurs who are really the backbone of a healthy economy to dare to dream big and to dare to build businesses and move to the next level. And then we need capital. Capital which can be blended initially in an economy which is underserved, to then actually attract more institutional capital. We need capital to particularly blend the capital initially to showcase that this is circular economy where the plastics or others is investable, and that's the right way to do. And so capital now can really help in bringing those entrepreneurs into the game, allow them to compete economically, and then really grow the industry accordingly. So all of us on this panel are part of this, and we all have to really just continue to stick to our commitments and deliver.
Essential. Thank you. And Tim, your 1 minute key takeaway.
Yes, so if I can quote from Charles Darwin, he said it's not the most intellectual of the species that survives, it's not the strongest that survives, but it's a species that the species that survives is the one that is able to adapt and to adjust best to the changing environment in which it finds itself. I don't subscribe to everything he wrote, but I think that makes a lot of sense. So it just makes me think, if we look at the fragility of our traditional business systems, how it's so badly affected by COVID-19, do we still want to invest into things like that? Or should we invest into nurturing the people who are producing the right solutions, right? I work with a team of very young people, and they are teaching me every day how to solve these problems. So that's where I hope to encourage investors in the TBN network, especially, to look at helping, with the solutions for this circular economy.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great call to action. And Tommy, you get the remaining 1 minute.
I think we as a society have no choice. We have to move to this model. We have to move in a model where we are integrate more tightly with nature, where we use and reuse our material as well as much as possible. And I think what people need to realize is what is the true cost of not moving right now? And that is, as a society, the hardest part, right? We know we have to exercise, otherwise we'll grow old in painful ways, but how to make sure that you can feel the pain today and not tomorrow or not when you're old? because right now already people are saying we eat like cumulatively one credit card size of plastic every week. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of when that it starts to attack our bodies, and mass will attack our society. Is it 2 credit cards? Is it 5 credit cards a week? Is it 7? Well, and our antibody will start to reject it, and all sorts of crazy stuff happening. And COVID just gives us a preview. If we don't live in harmony with nature, if we don't live in a very responsible way in stewarding our earth and stewarding each other, then this is what's going to happen. So circular economy and this kind of social entrepreneurship thinking should be the future. All the businesses should incorporate environmental and social impact to their business plan, not only the financial thing. So I jokingly say, I don't know if any of you are accountants in this group as well. Accountants will save the day. I jokingly say, I'm not an accountant. Why accountants will save the day? If you fix the gap standards, if you fix everything to incorporate environmental and social costs to it, the P&L, profit and loss, will look different. And then people will start building business models that is truly account for those things. And that's hopefully will go sooner than later. And Tim Tan is leading the charge here, and Regula also, and Yvonne. I'll be supporting all of you guys. I'll be your fans here. So let's continue to push on, and we do need all the help we can get, because it does at times feels like we're cleaning after everybody. We're cleaning dishes after everybody's having a party. Let's
That's
change.
a great way to wrap up.
Let's change the party to be good party in the first place, huh?
Yeah, and let everyone do their own dishes, perhaps, is the takeaway there. So I would like to just extend a very deep gratitude to all 4 of the fantastic panelists that have joined us for today. I wish we had 3 hours to discuss, and I was lucky enough to chat with many of them last week. So I encourage all of you to stay for the next 30-minute session so you can have a chance to ask some of those maybe more specific questions to individual panelists. And I will turn it over to Wen to lead you through that next session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Erin. That was amazing. And same goes. I wish we had so much more time, but that's what the half an hour is for. So just really for those people who need to log off, totally understand. So that's why we're doing this before the networking session. But just a couple of next steps. The next session is 5 p.m. today, and it is on women-led, women-focused. And we have some amazing stories and entrepreneurs that will be sharing their story as well. And the moderator is actually Ilaria Chan from Grab, head of social impact investment there. So we're really excited for the lineup. So please join us at 5 o'clock. Spread the word, please. We've just second session into this week. So please, there's tickets available, share on social media, the hashtags are on there. We would love for more people to join us. And also for those social entrepreneurs out there, the tickets are actually free for founders themselves. So please get the word out. For those who want to connect with TBN, these are just a couple of contact names and the different pillars that we were talking about earlier in TBN. Please get in touch. Our emails are there. This Saturday is what we call Social Enterprise Saturday. So we're showcasing 36 enterprises who'll be presenting from various industries, and it starts at 9 a.m. to 1:30. So you can log in whenever you need to. There will be a schedule coming out. But yes, let's come around and support them. And this is open to the public as well. So there's no ticket for that one. No, you don't have to pay. And also connect with the social enterprise exhibitors on the app, and you can find out more about them too. At this stage, we're just going to put up a quick poll to get your feedback on the session itself. Just a couple of quick questions. We would love for you to just let us know how you found the session, and we're always using this as feedback to kind of get better and better throughout, but that was already an amazing session. So if you can just fill that out right now, that will be really, really helpful. And while you're doing that, we'll actually dive straight into the networking session. I know Erin has to go off right now. So thank you, Erin. It was amazing. And I'm sure we're going to see you again in some TBN event coming up in the future. So I just want to say thank you for your time. I know there's a lot of prep work going into this as well.
Look forward to it. Take care.
See you, Erin. And for the rest, I might just start diving into the questions that we didn't get to. So I think the first one I'll do is for regular. And this is from Ash. What are the big areas of challenge, opportunities, or opportunities in the circular economy approach, which social enterprises can tap into for new business development? Yep.
Excuse me. We're staying in the same room. Wonderful. Could you please repeat the question?
Sure. What are the big areas of challenge or opportunities in the circular economy approach, which social enterprises can tap into for new business or new business development?
When I so looking back to, or just first stepping back to understand the issue of waste management, that's really what I like to talk about. You need, looking at the entire value chain. Along the value chain, there are tremendous opportunity of investments. That could be in the area of building up collection and sorting and recovery of material. It can be in processing of material, meaning recycling of material, ideally full circle, closed loop. It can be in the area of innovation, where Tommy comes in, right? Alternative material, new distribution models. I think in the area of digitalization, what we heard from Yvonne, they are particularly also in our industry, great opportunities in better understanding the material flow, big data, because without data and without understanding of the entire material flow, of transparency, it is possible, but it makes it more challenging to come up with or to assess the investment opportunities. I think the digitalization provides, or the big data provides, big opportunities. Now, I'm not a techie, but I know that there is quite some movement in that industry, and that I think is particularly key in going back to that transparency. We need to not only make better investment decisions, but to really also get the right information for any stakeholder in the supply chain, in our supply chain, or in the circular economy, to really make the right decisions. So I think, and then every geography is different, right? You need to understand the behavior of the consumers on the ground, the needs, each country has different needs, obviously. So I think the more tailored you can be, but still very with a business model which can scale and replicate, I guess the better you are positioned.
Great, thank you. I'm going to throw the same question out to the panel because you guys are on the ground as well and might have some interesting angles on that. But before I do that, the chat box is open. So please, say hi, where you're from, what company you're representing, and kind of chat away on there as well. This just popped up. Very interesting question. Oh, it's just moved. Where did it go? Oh, no. Hold on a minute. It was from a Norwegian. Hold on. Where did it go? It was someone from a Norwegian
NGO.
Yeah.
Sorry, I replied to it, so it disappeared.
Oh, that's okay. Hold on. I would love to read this out. Where did it jump to? Answered, sorry.
I can read it out.
Okay.
There was a question from Karen to him. We are a Norwegian-based NGO looking to start up investments in the circular economy where we already have footprint in community development. Have you explored the feasibility of what you do in Cambodia? Would love to connect.
Tommy, do you want to take that? Or?
Yeah, I think again, like-minded, like vision is always a great place to start. And happy to connect. We're not in Cambodia just yet, but we're happy to connect. And again, in this kind of approach is with systemic issues such as this, we need to really be careful with unintended consequences as well. So our approach, you fix the upstream, you create unintended consequences downstream. You fix downstream, you create unintended consequences in other parts. So it is crazy, and we've been taking a lot of notes, and we make a lot of mistakes, and we make some things that we did right and some things we did wrong. So happy to connect further, and each country will have different environment and different optimum of solution sets, for instance. So our approach is always in a way we try to be open-minded and agnostic and understand. It's like a doctor as opposed to drug sellers, right? If drug sellers, okay, you use Green Hope drug if you have headache or if you have COVID, that's a bad approach. But you really need to understand what is the underlying symptoms and what is the underlying context, how mature the waste management system over there, the infrastructure over there, the ability of people to pay, and all those things are real factors to overcome the barriers. Otherwise, we could spend a long time without actually penetrating properly. Happy to help. Happy to collaborate together. I shared our contact already in there, in the participants chat. Yeah. So.
Right. Thank you. And I love your no harm approach as well. Sorry, Tim.
No, I just want to resonate what Tommy said. Thank you for the question, Karen. My journey into low-cost housing actually started in Cambodia. Just to relate a personal story, we went there on mission trips, trying to help the poor folk there by building a school and a church, but throughout that time of 1 year, I learned that it's not necessarily what they needed. They were sending their kids to the school because that was the one chance for them to get a meal every day. But these people were actually, the congregants of the church, and they actually lived in the slums. They were so poor. They had, recycled construction bags and tins for the roof. The weather came, it just blew right through the house, and many, many old folks were sick. So, Cambodia resonates deep in my heart. We would love to be able to do something there with the people. It's really about finding the right operators. As Tommy said, you got to have the whole infrastructure. It's not a difficult thing to do, to plant kanaf. It's not difficult to process it, to manufacture, or to build. But you've got to have disciplined people behind the whole operations, and that takes a lot of education, a lot of elbow grease. We're prepared to do it if we can partner with the right team.
Great, thank you for that.
May I add to that?
Yeah.
I think I think what is also extremely important, and Tim just mentioned that, and it goes maybe back to the early question I had. I think what is for me has always been extremely important, and certainly a learning in my prior work, during which I met Tim. My background is also in construction and affordable housing, is going as an entrepreneur, going into a business with a mindset of not, I think I know it all and I know what solution I want to bring to the market, but really understand the needs of the local communities, and make them a key driver of the innovation you wanna bring to the market. And I give you a very quick anecdote, and then I was in construction as well in the Philippines, and it was about building affordable housing, and the community members wanted a balcony. But when you look at the physical structure of building an additional balcony to a house, it comes with cost. And when you think about making it economically feasible for the communities, the first thing you would let go is a balcony. Until we were sitting down and really trying to understand why they wanted a balcony. And why did they want a balcony? Because it was not about, putting your laundry out there or sitting there, no. But if you're prone to flooding constantly, the way to get on a roof is through the balcony. And that opened my eyes, literally, by going in with a thinking, I need to build a house, affordable house under this setting, to stepping away back and understanding, so what is really the needs they have, and what kind of solution can I contribute to, what can I contribute to that? And that goes along with Tim. I think it's really about understanding the local complexity and the needs and the desires and the hopes of those you want to work with, and finding the right partners and making it an equal partnership. And for me, that's true entrepreneurship. So thanks, Tim, for bringing that up. It just resonated with me very much.
Thank you, Regula. That was really, really impactful. And yeah, that was amazing. Can I maybe just put one? Oh no, I think we have time for maybe another two. So from Jackie Hocking, what is being done to help support and transition chemical industry / chemical sector away from plastics as a raw material? Does anyone in the room know this and can comment?
Well, I'll try to answer this candidly. Maybe I will need help probably with from Yvonne or Regula, Tim. Chemical industry is really big, right? And it's got huge momentum. And we're talking about billions and billions of dollars businesses. So, and they're producing all the time. So it's actually one of the biggest homework, how to make sure these elephants slowly moving out of that, or at least, for instance, in my ideal world, when I speak with the polymer producers, for instance, yeah, you can say increase recycling or pyrolysis and all that stuff, but in your business plan, if you continue pushing and growing like as much as possible with the current products, 20% growth every year and stuff like that, it's very hard for us to keep up in cleaning that dish, right? Unless the government also takes steps. So maybe one thing is really for the companies to really have a different unit or innovative unit that starts to really on the recycling side. So increasingly their revenue generated from the new circular part of things is getting bigger and bigger as a function of time. That's probably when that reality happens, then I believe that we will start to build a momentum. But if these giants are still continuing and building, then we have the parallel of renewable versus oil and gas. How long has that been going on for the discussion, right? People in the renewable has been talking about renewable for like 3 decades, and here we are still, and with the lowest ever oil price. I just don't want us to talk about circular economy 3 decades from now, and we got to get something going here. At least the conventional way of doing things needs to move. So we have, and we can't point fingers at the end of the day. We have to be mature about it. Everybody contributes to the good and the bad of things. So we just need to work together and bring them together to work together. That's the only way. If you exclude people from the table, then what they do is they create confusion, they create disinformation, they create all sorts of stuff. Then we're gonna lose another 10 years. So however we don't sometimes feel frustrated or don't like, we have to be able to work with everybody at the end of the day. So that's how I see it. Please add to it.
Thanks, Tommy. Anybody else from the panel?
I think Tommy made a very good point. I think it goes back to also looking at the full transparent life cycle of products. Plastic is not per se bad. Plastic has its good use, and we know that when you compare that to other material. If you really break it down to the entire life cycle, and that's I think what we need, and the full transparency, then plastic has its place, absolutely. But I think it goes then further, exactly, and we as consumers exactly are playing also a big part of that. How we consume and how we use material and how we see the value in material or throw it away and don't see value. I think here comes really then the aspect of what material is used at its best in what content, and how do we ensure that any material, and it's not just about plastic, it's about paper, it's about glass, it's about steel, it's about construction material, but whatever we use it consciously in the best context, and we make sure it's brought back into circular economy. I think we cannot deny that all the materials and all the raw materials we use today has its purpose, and I think we just need to be very conscious about how we use it, when we use it, how we bring it back, how we recycle it, and also you consume differently, right? So I think, again, and what Tommy said, we need to ensure that everyone is at the table and we all work towards solutions together.
Thank you for that, Regula. And I like that you touched on all the other materials. One of the questions was actually fashion. I know it's a huge topic that we haven't even talked about today, fast fashion. And just, but you can see that there's an increasing industry of people only wanting to buy secondhand clothes. I'm one of them. I literally op shop around the world when I travel. And I think the joys of actually buying something that is only one piece as opposed to a whole stack of them, I get a lot of thrills from it. But thank you for touching over all the different materials and actually the different, enterprises and solutions that can be formed when we take a more circular economy approach and look at things and really value the products. Oh, sorry, you're going to say something. Go ahead.
No, sorry. It's just, I think it's fabulous because I'm not a fashion expert, but when you look at the waste produced in the fashion industry globally, it's I mean, I don't even know the numbers, but it's on the impact it has on the economy and on the people who work in that industry is significant and certainly needs rethinking. And there are efforts. Knowing though that in fashion, then we have natural materials, right? And textile is also plastics. I mean, it's a lot of the recycled content actually goes back into fashion and into textiles. I mean, you can recycle PET and bring it back into the textile industry.
Yeah, thank you. I think we just have, Tim, I can see your hand.
Sorry, I just wanted to add this, that I failed to mention something about the Kanaf plant. It does produce very useful fibers, and those fibers, have been used thousands of years ago to make clothing. So there you go, one solution for fashion, perhaps. But in today's context, it's being used to produce even automotive or aerospace components to make vehicles lighter, more fuel efficient, etc., etc. Now, how does this apply to plastics? I've read about a company that manufactures biocomposite material using bioresin epoxy. And I think that is a really fantastic solution to addressing what's going on. Basically, that would replace plastic resins, synthetic resins, and it would replace fiberglass, So, there are many benefits from there, not just economic, but environmental as well.
Tim, you are the Kanaf expert. I love it. You should be the ambassador for Kanaf. Tommy.
I just want to tie in a little bit about the title here, Survive to Thrive. Answering question from Joshua, right? There's for startup with relatively small capital, how do you compete with others who do not care about this at all? The problem is if we do, it's very challenging to move systemic issues from third industrial revolution where take, make, and throw to circular by having local optimum. Local optimum doesn't work. That's why a lot of the small stuff cannot be profitable. We have to have a system optimum where then things the value can be recreated. It's almost like you need to rethink the whole thing as well. It doesn't mean that we cannot start now. We have to start now. All of us are starting right now. But eventually realize that we have to exist. Our solution will be able to amplify it as part of the bigger ecosystem. Cannot be standalone solution and you can make like tons of profit and stuff. So, but that presents an opportunity actually to thrive. And not only the accountants, now I backpedal, I think a lot of people can be heroes as well. The storytellers, the marketing people, I think our failure as a society is a failure of lack of imaginations. irritates me when I got the WhatsApp that says, look, a cyclist is the worst for the economy because he's healthy, doesn't need a doctor, McDonald's not getting any revenue, and all those stuff, right? It's doesn't buy a car, doesn't buy this, doesn't buy that. It's very bad for the economy. But that's very bad for an unsustainable economy. But it can be good for the good economy. So we have to be redemptive in our thinking that, look, there will be some other good product for the cyclist to consume. It could be in a form of service as opposed to hoarding our material existence to death, you know. For us to thrive, we need to reimagine again what is actually make people happier as a holistic manner and as a society. And it's proven a lot of the stuff that we buy, a lot of the material becomes waste and everything. It doesn't bring us that big of a marginal level of happiness anyways. Apparently, a lot of the stuff that can bring happiness is in the form of different type of services. And that's where the opportunity for the future is, you know. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Amazing, Tommy. I was going to pick that question as the last one. You actually wrapped up the session really well. You took my job away from me, Tommy. But thank you so much. We have 1 minute and I've enjoyed seriously every single second of this. Thank you so much to our panelists. For those who don't know, Regular's actually dialing in from Switzerland, and it's like, what time over there, Regular, at the moment?
Now it's 7:30 a.m.
Yeah, but it was like 5 something when we first chatted. So much. We always want to keep this, like, this is not the end. I really believe that, you know, there's so much more ways that we can collaborate, keep in touch, and we would love to, I would love to hear another session on this, because there's just so much content out there and just really, really interesting perspectives. So again, thank you so much for the time. I know a lot of you have actually stayed on. This is a lot of number of people who stayed on to the networking session. Please keep in contact via the app and just keep sharing. And we really hope to see you at 5 p.m. today. Tim, is that a goodbye or is that a hands up?
No, I just wanted to mention that some of us have virtual exhibition booths, so please come and visit us.
Yes, on the
another hand up.
Yeah, so if you guys can, the panelists who are happy to put the email, I know a couple of you guys have already, I just put it on the chat on the side, just paste it on there and people can just take a screenshot or just copy and paste. But thank you so much again. That was a great lunchtime. I know probably for a couple of us, we have to actually go and eat lunch now. But thank you again. And I really hope to see all of you at 5 p.m. On the dot for another great session. Thank you very much and take care.